So, hello, I am Coy Ferrell. I'm the editor of the Loudoun Times-Mirror up in Loudoun County, Virginia. Loudoun is part of, I think, 6 different jurisdictions in the Virginia 10th District. And it's Loudoun, most of Prince William County, the cities of Manassas and Manassas Park, Fauquier. And what am I missing? That little sliver of Fairfax County. That is also in the 10th District, but is so wonderful. The League of Women Voters from throughout the 10th District have put this on. And my one question would be, how are we going to do timekeeping if Ms. Godfrey is not able to turn her video on?
Right. Okay, I have 20, 10, stop, and 30 seconds and 1 minute.
And for the candidates, I believe there's a way to pin her video feed just to make sure that you can see her as you are answering your questions. So we're going to do 1 minute for each question. I know that's not a lot, but I think we have, let me see, it would be 16 people. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. 12 people, 12 candidates on this call. So just out of respect for everyone, we ask you to stick to that 1 minute. And I'm sure you've been through enough forums by now to know the drill. So first I'm going to go through, and I would ask that you mute your mic if you're not speaking to avoid issues with feedback. So excuse me, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do, as I told whoever was on the call a few minutes ago, I have a cup full of the candidates' names. I'm just going to select them randomly for each round of questions, and that way we don't have the exact same order every time. So the first question is just going to be an introduction. So I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself. I want you to tell us why you're running for Congress and why you're the best candidate to represent the 10th District. And I would also please request that you tell us if you live in the 10th District. So Ms. Filler-Korn, you were up first.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see you all. I'm Eileen Filler-Korn, the 56th Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, and I'm running for Congress because more than ever now we need women on the front lines defending our rights and our freedom. As a mom, delegate, and eventually the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House, my mission has always been to protect our families. As the first woman to be Speaker of the House, I took on Republicans. I led the charge to roll back extreme right-wing abortion restrictions. I protected our democracy, holding election deniers accountable, passing universal background checks, red flag laws, Virginia Values Act. We passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act, putting us on a pathway to carbon neutrality. And we made Virginia the critical 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, and so much more. And now it's time to take those fights to Congress to codify Roe and protect our democracy by restoring our Voting Rights Act. And I believe strongly we need a leader with the courage and the know-how to hit the ground running on day one. And I'm here because I believe I'm the candidate to do it, and I'm not alone in that belief. It's why Governor Ralph Northam, Attorney General Mark Herring, Loudoun's own Attorney General Mark Herring, Congressman Jamie Raskin, and so many others have endorsed me. They know that in Congress, I'll have the courage to continue the fights for issues like securing abortion access, expanding voting rights, defending our democracy, and finally passing an assault weapon ban. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to earning your support this election.
Thank you, Ms. Filler-Korn. Mr. Leighton, you're next.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Mark Leighton. I am a librarian. I've been a Democratic volunteer for a long time. I started in 1998 volunteering for Chuck Schumer when he ran against Al D'Amato. They actually thought I was a spy from the D'Amato campaign. The campaign manager used to kick me out of the office when he saw me sitting there. But eventually they realized that I had good intentions. I was a deputy field organizer for Obama Biden in Virginia Beach in 2008. Made a lot of phone calls for Hillary in 2016. In 2020, I was driving up to York, Pennsylvania every weekend, knocking on doors because I knew Pennsylvania was going to be close. So I've been a volunteer for a long time. The problem is when you're a volunteer, you don't always agree with everything the candidate is doing. I think that Democrats have lost a chance to win some elections that we could have won because of policy missteps. But when you're a volunteer, it's hard to make a contribution on a policy level unless you're a staffer or you're a member of the staff so I wanted to become a candidate to throw my hat in the ring and speak out for the issues that I think are important. My slogan is let's get things done, because I've got some practical solutions to things I hear voters complaining about. Got a plan to lower college tuition. I've got a plan to lower healthcare costs. I've got a lot more on my website. Looking forward to talking to you here tonight. Thanks so much. Oh, by the way, I live in Manassas.
Thank you, Mr. Leighton. And I'm sorry if I butchered this last name, but Pokharel is next up.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Adrian Pokharel. I live in Gainesville. I'm honored to stand before you today as a Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress from Virginia 10th District. I'm an immigrant, I'm a disabled veteran and Nepali American. My journey has been shaped by service and dedication to this great nation. I'm a former NSA and CIA officer. My campaign is basically focuses on mental health to our unsung heroes, the priority as the intelligence worker, police force, EMT, healthcare, firefighters, senior citizen, teachers, and also focusing on free community college, safe gun law, sensible gun laws, and immigration reform. And that will be it for me for right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Nembhard, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Travis Nembhard. I do live in the district. I live in Bristow, Virginia, right outside of Manassas. And I live in the district with my wife, Stephanie, who's a public school teacher. And we have our two little ones who are 3 and 5. They keep us very much busy. And they're the reason why I'm running. I'm running to build a pipeline for the next generation of leaders. And I think it's time that we invest in our next generation. Despite being the youngest candidate in this race, I bring the broadest swath of experience, having been a former judge, financial regulator, tech regulator, legislative counsel, drafting legislation and bills, and former assistant attorney general. Beyond my experience touching all 3 branches of government and becoming the first potential member of Congress with direct experience regulating tech, I also bring experience building support in core constituencies. Many of you have supported me last year when I ran for the Virginia House of Delegates in the 22nd District, leaning Republican seat. No Democrat wanted to run in that seat. We had the highest youth early vote turnout. We raised $2.4 million. We outperformed President Biden by 14 points in the district. And Governor Youngkin spent most of Election Day in Bristow, my town of Bristow, on Election Day because of the efforts that we put forth. I will do the same here, especially given that Northern Virginia has never elected an African-American to Congress. That is something that will, I think, motivate many African-American voters, the youth vote, given my age, sorry, and then finally the Latino community with the endorsement from CASA in Action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Reid, you're up next.
Coy, thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters from both Loudoun and Fauquier and Prince William for being able to do this and coordinate this. I think that I have been to several of your events over the last several years. And also, Coy, I want to thank you for hosting this. I know we've had a chance to talk as you have taken over the job of editor at the Loudoun Times-Mirror. So I want to talk about just a couple of the questions that were asked. One is do you live in the 10th Congressional District? And my wife and my daughters, 2 adult daughters, have now lived in Loudoun County for 24 years. And I'm very proud to say that my girls attended Mill Run, Eagle Ridge, and Briarwoods High School. They both went to college in Virginia, and they both still call Loudoun County home. So this is our home community for us. The other question I think that was asked was, why are you running? And I think that's really very important because it's like, I want to give you the opportunity to go back and think about what you were doing as a junior in college. Because for me, as a junior in college, I was 10 years removed from living in a 4-room cinder block house without indoor plumbing. And then I was on the cusp of becoming the first person in my family's history to be able to get a college degree. And I remember at that time thinking that I owed something back to the nation that had given me so much. That's the reason why in 1988, I joined the Navy Reserves. I got a top secret clearance while there was still a Cold War going on. So I know I'm dating myself now, but that's 34 years worth of experience that I bring to being able to deal with the international issues of today. That's also the reason why I ran in 2017 and won by the largest margin of victory of anybody who is running against an incumbent Republican. And it's also now why I am running for Congress here in 2024. For me, it's about service. It's about being able to give back. It's about being a part of the community. And those are all the things that I think are so very important to this race. And I look forward to your questions later this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Subramanyam, you're next. Suhas.
He's going to be late, so.
No, he's there. I
Someone
see him.
else.
I'm here. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I had my volume turned down.
No,
I'm State Senator Suhas Subramanyam. I live in Loudoun, eastern Loudoun County in Ashburn, and I represent Loudoun County in the State Senate. I'm running for the 10th district here, and I represented a part of Prince William County too when I was in the state house. But I'm, served our community as a volunteer firefighter EMT. I served in the Obama White House as a technology advisor. I've done a lot of work over the years at every level of government, just trying to get things done for a community. On Capitol Hill, I worked on the Affordable Care Act. In the White House, I worked on big issues on technology policy. And as a state delegate and as a state senator, I took on a lot of the tough fights for a community, whether it was a toll road going through Loudoun County, whether it was utility bills and overcharges by monopoly utility companies, or whether it was prescription drug pricing, whatever it was, I took on the fight. And I want to do that in Congress. And a lot of my success, I want to bring that to the federal level and get our fair share from the federal government, because we have so many federal workers here, so many people who touch the federal government. And so I'm proud to have the support of our Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, as well as some of the other elected officials like State Senator Scott Saravel and State Senator Russell Perry. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions today, and looking forward to serving our community.
Thank you so much. Ms. Boysko, you're next.
Well, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters. I have been a member and have worked with you all really closely on a bunch of legislative issues around abortion care, paid family and medical leave, equal pay, to just name a few off the top of my hat. I'm the only person in this race who has represented over 200,000 people over the past 5 years, has served in leadership as the fundraising chair for the Senate, holding the majority, helping not only in the Senate, but also in the House and at the local level, and have served as the transportation chair, the broadband advisory chair, and continues to work in this community. My husband and I moved here 28 years ago where our girls grew up. I live 4 blocks over the line, and if I win, I will move into the district, but have represented more of the district than anybody else here for 5 years. I am, excuse me, I'm really driven by my personal story. I watched my mother deal with really hard situations around our economic viability. She was once paid with sleeping bags after working for an entire month at a store. And so she made it her priority that I got a college degree after she got her school. She went back to school and became a nurse. And I have focused on things like giving our immigrant community the opportunity for in-state tuition and financial aid. I have been working on paid family and medical leave and just got that through the House and the Senate this year. I'm the chief patron of the abortion constitutional amendment this year, because my daughters and I and all of our families deserve to make decisions about when, with whom, and at what time in our lives we're going to have a child. And that's something that I will be fighting for in Congress. And I'm just so looking forward to this conversation tonight. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anantatmula, you are next.
Thanks, Leagues of Women of Loudoun, for having me on this town hall. I'm actually running because I am a minority, and I ran away from India 35 years ago for diversity and equity. And today, after 35 years, I'm being handed the same thing with a bonus of inclusion programs, whatever I ran away from 35 years ago. So I'm here and I'm fighting against Biden's open border policies and Biden's bad economy policies and funding ever going foreign wars, and that's what I'm against, and bad education. And I think there's a lot of things that I can do as an immigrant for this community. And I am also the only candidate who actually overturned the affirmative action in the US Supreme Court last year, June. I've again filed a lawsuit, amicus brief in the US Supreme Court to get rid of DEI. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm a fighter. I know what I'm doing. I've always achieved. And I think discrimination is the least thing that we should do. I believe the best way not to discriminate is not to differentiate people. And I think the left has gone crazy with the discriminatory policies. I have beat them once in the US Supreme Court. I will beat them again in the US Supreme Court. And before then, as a representative of the Virginia 10th District, I am going to get rid of DEI and many other evils of this country and close the borders and improve our economy, help the small businesses grow, and bring better education into our schools. No inclusion programs in our schools. That's what I believe in. And congratulations, Suhas Subramanyam, for having being endorsed by Jennifer Wexton, and my condolences to the women candidates in the Democratic Forum, because she chose patriarchy over meritocracy. She decided that you guys are not good enough. I'm sorry for you guys that your own had done it. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Ms. Maldonado, you are next up.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, League of Women Voters. Thank you, Coy. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here speaking with everybody. I'm Michelle Maldonado. I am a current sitting state delegate, having represented the previous District 50 and the current District 20. I'm the only woman in the race who is both a resident of the district and has experience representing portions of the district. And there are four things I think that are distinguishers for me as in relation to the other candidates. The first is my more holistic and 360 perspective around international relations and foreign policy. That's been informed by my years of work with the UN Foundation and their international peacekeepers and humanitarian aid workers, addressing things that we are seeing on fire all around the world, like in the Middle East and Sudan, Haiti, and other places. The second is my skillful navigation, bringing people through very polarized places and being able to bring them together. And that's been informed by my work at the southern border in Arizona, my work bringing, after the murder of George Floyd, working with Minneapolis community leaders, and ultimately working with congressional staffers after the attack on the Capitol. The third thing that's different about me is my deep 2+ decades work in technology. I am a technology lawyer by training, working in the back end, so working in algorithms, coding, and the AI, and then moving to business tech roles, and fast forward to current day, being the founder of our Technology and Innovation Caucus in the General Assembly, standing up a statewide AI work group, and sitting on a national steering committee for AI with other legislators. I plan to absolutely codify Roe and protect contraception rights and access. I was excited to be able to pass law that protected our elders against elder financial exploitation this session. And I also, just Friday, the governor signed my bill making Virginia's first online data privacy protection act live, and that will go into effect this July. Also passing law and focusing on housing, affordable housing, attainable housing, our environment, and opioid abuse and addiction issues. Lastly, I helped to pass and reimagine our funding formula for English language learners this session, providing significant funding for that and funding for our teachers. I think we have a lot to do. There's a lot to do on the international level around justice and around humanitarian work, and I'm excited to be able to do that for us once there. Thank you so much, and I look forward to questions coming up.
Thank you so much. Mr. Qarni, you are up next.
Thank you, Coy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for League of Women Voters we actually had the honor of working with League of Women Voters on a couple of occasions when I was a classroom teacher in Prince William. The Prince William League of Women Voters helped organize mock elections for my 8th grade civics class. So it was a really fun experience for me and the students. And thank you for also working with the Secretary of Education and registering our high school students in the Governor's Challenge and working with high schools across the state. So thank you for all the work that you all do at League of Women Voters and all the civic engagement inspiration that you create across our communities. My name's Atif Qarni. An immigrant as well. I like some other folks running in this congressional primary. I'm also a U.S. Marine. I'm very proud of my service. Also was a classroom teacher. Been a resident for in this district in Manassas, Prince William for about 20 years. And I was the Secretary of Education for Virginia for 4 years. Why I'm running for Congress is I'm really focused on listening to our community members, and they are concerned about a lot of different things. They want to protect Social Security. They want to protect, all the healthcare options. They want to protect women's reproductive rights. College students are really concerned about the health of our planet. They're concerned about the global injustices. They're concerned about the cost of college. Small businesses are really hurting as well. So I really want to focus on funding healthcare, funding education, funding small businesses, funding housing. I am opposed to funding unjust wars. We really need to get our priorities straight. I believe in our core American values of freedom and democracy and justice, and really being empathetic to everyone. And this is what this really needs to be about, and not about distractions with the little petty stuff. I am actually a big champion of DEI, and I would add justice to this. And I believe a lot of my Democratic colleagues as well. And I think the Democrats, we do a really good job in bringing people together and being inclusive of everyone. And we don't do petty things to divide wedges between different communities. And that's why I'm really proud to be part of this field with these other 11 amazing individuals, and hope to take your questions in this forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kaul, you are next.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's good to see several of you again. I saw some of you at the luncheon recently, and thank you, Coy, for moderating. Good evening, everyone. I'm Krystle Kaul. I live in Loudoun. I'm actually the only woman from Loudoun who's running in this race. I am the daughter and granddaughter of Indian immigrants. My grandfather immigrated to this country to pursue the American dream and gave that to my family. And I am running because I'd like to give that to constituents in VA 10. I was one of the youngest directors of the Department of Defense and the highest civilian rank. I worked closely with Secretary Mattis. I also worked with Secretary Austin, leading the ISIS crisis counterterrorism cell during a time of war. I resigned in protest to Trump because I saw the effects of MAGA extremism around the administration, and I want to fight against them. I want to fight for women's reproductive health freedoms. I've worked with UN Women headquarters, fighting for disenfranchised women globally. And I have lived in conflict zones around the world. I have seen the effects of gun violence. And I want to make sure that we institute common sense gun safety laws here, ban assault weapons, and make sure we have safe neighborhoods. As a national security Democrat, I believe that it starts with public safety. We have to have safe communities, and then we can have a safer America. And I look forward to all your questions. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. And finally, Mr. Devoe, you are up next.
All right. Thank you. Good evening to everybody, and thank you, Coy, and thank you, League of Women Voters. I am Marion Devoe, and why I'm running for Congress, I've been traveling around the country in Virginia, and I've seen a lot of problems within the neighborhoods, within the schools, on the roads, and even in the airports. I am a former Chief Operation Officer for the U.S. Postal Service, for the White House, for Xerox Corporation, and for North Virginia Community College. I write policies, I hire people, I fire people, and I manage and I put things together and put them back in place. I want to become a part of Congress to look at some of the issues that we are facing and provide some solution to them. Part of my training is to provide solution and methods and policies I've written policy for the federal government, for the Postal Service. And even I had input in policy for George W. Bush, the president that I worked for. I want to correct some of the issues that we're facing now, including affordable housing, women reproductive rights, gun violence in America. Right now, America has become one of the most dangerous places in the world for children to walk around. They cannot walk around safely in the streets because being afraid of being struck by stray bullets. And in terms of women reproductive rights, America has also become the most dangerous place in the world for women during pregnancy. And it's not because of child infant mortality rate, it is because of the recent Supreme Court decision. I want to codify that and make that a decision for all Americans, for all women, so that they can have the right for women reproductive rights again, like it was prior to the recent Supreme Court decision. It is my hope and my wish that you would consider my vast background in corporate America as well as federal government. And I've been a public service for over 30 plus years. I live in the district. I'm dedicated. I'm passionate about what I believe in. Thank you very much.
All right, and that is everyone. Before I go into the next question, Ms. Anantatmula, Ms. Villarcorn, and Mr. Qarni, I don't think I caught whether you lived in the 10th district.
I live in Springfield, just outside the 10th district. Part of my Springfield magisterial district is inside the 10th. And even though I was elected to represent one delegate district, I had the responsibility for all of the Commonwealth and all of the 10th congressional district. And I'm proud to have delivered for all of the 10th.
Did you say my name?
Manga. I live in Leesburg, and I lived before Leesburg in Ashburn, and I'm now living in a resident of Leesburg now.
Great. Yes, and Mr. Qarni, I don't think I caught.
Yes. I've lived in this congressional district for 20 years.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all. All right, so I'm going to move on to the first question. I will also copy paste each question that I ask into the chat just to make sure. I know sometimes I don't talk the most clearly. Again, I write for a living. I do not talk for a living. So the first question that I have is, in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent ruling on Roe v. Wade, should Congress pass legislation on access to abortion and contraception, or leave it to the states? And Ms. Boysko, you are up first.
Thank you so much, Coy. Yes, we need to codify Roe and expand it so that doctors have the ability to treat their patients as they know that would be appropriate for each patient, rather than allowing a bunch of politicians to make these decisions. We've seen around the country where patients have been, having medical crises in their pregnancies. They need to get abortions and they're having to jump through hoops. Doctors are afraid to care for them. We also need to make certain that we are codifying the right to birth control. Just this week, the governor of Virginia just vetoed our contraceptive act that would have enshrined our rights to contraception. And we saw that Clarence Thomas, when the Dobbs decision was passed, made, that he said that perhaps we should go after Griswold next, which is our right to contraception. People should have the right and the freedom to make decisions about when, with whom, and at what time they're going to have babies. And I will work on that as the champion in Virginia, as I have been for years. It's very important to the voters of Virginia.
Thank you so much. Mr. Nembhard, you are next.
Thank you for that question. I think it might be the easiest one for tonight, just because I think it's a human right, and at the end of the day, I think that when I heard earlier today, Louisiana's legislature approved a bill classifying abortion pills as controlled dangerous substances, akin to that of heroin, meth, and fentanyl. For me, that's a problem, right? I think at the end of the day, this should be left up to women to determine what they do with their bodies. And so at the end of the day, I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that we protect that human right. It is not a state's issue. It never should be. We wouldn't say that any other human right was a state's issue, it's just right or wrong, right? And in this instance, by limiting women and millions of Americans in this way, it's wrong. So I would absolutely support legislation and push in whatever way I can to get that across the finish line.
Thank you so much. Ms. Villercorn, you are up next.
Thank you. Absolutely. On day one, I would sign on as a co-sponsor of the Reproductive Freedom for All Act to codify Roe, something I talk about all the time, but not only talk about something that is so important to me as proven by my leadership. So I'm the only candidate in this race that fought against Republican efforts in the Virginia House back in 2012 to shame women and harm access to reproductive health care, abortion access, and contraception. On the House floor, I also stood up and argued against the Republican transvaginal ultrasound bill and shined a light on HB1, the personhood bill, and the effect that it would have on contraception. Back in 2017, I passed the only pro-reproductive health care legislation bill in years and years. It was a pivotal piece of legislation that required all health benefit plans to provide coverage for hormonal contraceptives up to 12 months at a time. This is definitely, abortion is on the ballot this year. It's the #1 issue we hear about from voters all across the district. And absolutely, we need to codify Roe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Villercorn. Mr. Subramanyam, you are up next.
Thank you. I would agree. We need to codify Roe, and I'll add that this is only going to get worse if we don't fight for reproductive health care and women's health. That now we're seeing states try to ban IVF. It's just going to get worse. We have to stand up for this, and I do everything I can in Congress to protect IVF, protect reproductive rights, and continue the work that we've done at the state level in Virginia in Congress, because the Supreme Court seems to be a very activist Supreme Court. It seems to think that it can legislate, and that's really shouldn't be the case, but Congress should act if that's going to be the case.
Thank you so much. Mr. Leighton, you are up next.
Hi, thanks very much. I agree with what the others have said. The argument that the pro-life community had always made was that America wanted to have stricter abortion laws and the Supreme Court was standing in its way. And I think now, after the Dobbs decision and some of the electoral results in state referendums, including in places like Kentucky, where voters have decided to protect reproductive rights, it just shows that they were wrong. So I do believe that having a federal codification of Roe v. Wade is the right thing to do. I do respect the ability of states to implement their own policies. Louis Brandeis called them the laboratories of democracy, but ultimately we're a federal republic, and that's why I think that we need to ensure that if you're a woman and you have an ectopic pregnancy and you live in Alabama, that you don't have to travel 500 miles to get to the nearest place to receive treatment. It's a women's health issue.
Thank you so much. Ms. Maldonado, you are up next.
Thank you. So as a member of the courts committee, during my time in the Virginia General Assembly, I have fought to hold the brick wall against extreme abortion bans that have come before us in committee. There were 2 extreme bans this session in particular, which was an all-out ban, and one was a ban based on race exceptions. I think I said in my opening remarks, I will immediately codify Roe. We have to protect contraception and IVF. But let me just tell you, this is a precursor. If we don't hold these things and protect them, we are absolutely going to see a waterfall of other violations and degradations of rights. We're seeing affirmative action, voting rights. So we must stand firm here. We may have to consider expanding the Supreme Court. I know that's a very dicey and polarizing position, but all the time throughout history, the number of justices of the Supreme Court have matched the number of circuit courts in our country. We are at 13 circuit courts and 9 justices. So I think there's something to consider there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anantatmula, you are up next.
Well, this is a very question that is of such a significance that Democrats want to win only on this issue. So I would rather say, come debate with me. I'm open. Either one of them can choose me, or I can choose all of them and sit and debate with them and go public on it and see who has the more credentials and which way we should be going about this issue. Because this is not a yes or no question for me. I'm asking everybody who has the courage to debate on this issue, a full-fledged debate. I'm asking everybody to sign up.
Thank you so much. Mr. Devoe.
Thank you very much, Corey. I'm standing with my Democratic colleagues, and I do not listen to a mouthpiece on this. I believe strongly in women's reproductive rights. Without that, we would have serious issues in our country, particularly with contraceptives. Right now, like nobody wants to take care of the child that are being born and the parents cannot afford them. So we need to stand tall, and I will fight in Congress for women's reproductive rights and contraceptive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Reid.
Thanks, Corey. This is one of those issues that's really very personal for me, because I am the father of 2 adult women who this is something that they're worrying about on a regular basis. And so, yes, categorically, I would support putting the codification of Roe versus Wade, the results of that Supreme Court decision, in the federal code, so that a woman would have access to reproductive rights, whether they are in Virginia or Arkansas, Oklahoma, or California, because this is a universal right that all women should have access to. Thank you, Coy.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kaul.
Thank you. As a woman, I really understand what it means to have someone legislate on your body. I would absolutely codify Roe v. Wade on day one. I think that there are certain things that need to be taken out of states' hands. And the fact that it's 2024 and we're seeing a ban on abortion in Arizona is terrifying. I am someone who I studied women in politics more than 20 years ago at American University when it was just becoming a field. I helped co-author a book about breaking the glass ceiling for women getting into Congress, interviewing members of Congress at the time. And I worked with UN Women Headquarters. I have built electronic villages for women around the world, women who are disenfranchised. And I have helped on teaching about women's reproductive health freedoms. So I understand this personally, and I know that this is something where we absolutely need to cement coming into Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pokharel, you are up next.
I'm totally with all our my Democratic colleagues and partners. Definitely the bottom line is what I believe is, if the man can make a decision, why can't the woman? But beside all of that, you know, think about the mental health issues. What happens forcing a woman for something, and we're putting a woman and the child to go through this mental health crisis for the rest of their lives. So we have to think differently. Furthermore, if you really look at it, the biggest threat right now is a Project 2025 in how they are trying to take away. And I will fight hard just because I'm a soldier and I'm a fighter. I'm going to fight hard because I was raised by a single mother, and I understand how the women's are not equal in this current age. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Qarni.
Yes, all of the above that my Democratic colleagues said, and I think the Women's Health Protection Act is designed, it's not passed yet, and it has all the principles of protecting women's reproductive rights, access to safe and legal abortion across the country. And one of the things, I think everybody mentioned everything, but one of the things might not have been mentioned, I might have missed it, is also protecting privacy, like data privacy issue as well, adding that component in there. And I know that this is in the context of the Dobbs decision in the Supreme Court, is that I do believe that we do need a code of ethics legislation from Congress to provide better checks and balances for the Supreme Court as well, because you know, they haven't been acting in good faith with this issue, and of course with future issues that are in jeopardy as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And before I go to the next round of questions, I made 2 grave omissions. Rappahannock County is in the 10th district. Some of my fondest memories are in Rappahannock County. I grew up playing baseball at Stewart Field, behind the big white church on 211, in Manassas Park, Manassas Park. Even if you did beat us in baseball growing up, we will include you too. So I apologize for leaving out those two jurisdictions. On to another topic here. How should Congress approach funding and other support for Israel in its war with Hamas? And Ms. Fillercorn, you are up first.
Yes, as far as funding, I was glad to see that Congress finally passed the long overdue funding for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, as well as the funding for humanitarian aid. I think obviously this is a really, really devastating issue right now, obviously, what's going on in the situation. But with regard to, funding, I have long said that I believe, and the only lasting, for a just and lasting peace is only possible with the two-state solution. I have always said that, and I think I'm also probably the only person here out of all the opponents who has actually participated in a peaceful protest against Netanyahu in Israel. So my support, obviously, for Israel's right to self-defense and self-determination, it's not mutually exclusive from lack of support of Netanyahu government, and actually the only person who I'm sure has actually protested. I do believe that we need to stand with our democratic allies, and I do believe that the funding for Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan bill that Congress finally passed was long overdue.
Thank you, Ms. Fillercorn. Time's up. Ms. Maldonado, you're up next.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to say is that in Western culture, we are very good at saying that you have to pick one side or the other, that everything is black or white, good or bad, up or down. What I will say is that man's inhumanity to man is inhumanity. And in this instance, we cannot say that just because we show compassion for our Israeli brothers and sisters, that somehow that makes us anti-Palestine, or that if we show compassion for our Palestinian brothers and sisters, that somehow makes us anti-Israel. What I will say, though, is that the standards of what we do when we engage in war are clear at the international level. The international courts of justice have spoken. They've even defined very clearly what constitutes actions that facilitate genocide. We cannot, as a nation, be good corporate citizens and continue on the path of providing military aid that is so destructive and killing tens of thousands of people, creating famine, creating war and destitution. So I would say we cannot continue the aid in its current fashion because of the way the war is being executed, and must help Israel get its hostages back.
Thank you, Ms. Maldonado. Your time is up. Mr. Leighton, you're up.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I believe it is a nuanced issue. I think that we must move away from the Trump-Kushner policy of giving a blank check to Benjamin Netanyahu and his right-wing settler-based government. I think that we have our own interests when it comes to the Middle East, and we've been subsidizing Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been playing a very dangerous game in the Middle East. So I've been the first candidate in this race to call for conditionalizing military aid to Israel and requiring them to do more to protect civilians, because 30,000 civilians does not sound to me like they're closely targeting the terrorists. But on the other side, Hamas has hostages, and they are plainly trying to use them as blackmail. That's why I don't support a ceasefire, because that would be giving into blackmail. So I think that I agree with what Anthony Blinken said. It's an insurgency. Israel needs to have a targeted strategy where they are separating Hamas from the civilians and doing their best to locate the hostages and get them back.
Thank you, Mr. Leighton. Mr. Pokharel, you were up next.
So as a war veteran, I've seen a lot of, people dying left and right. So I would say first, yeah, definitely ceasefire, but also need to provide aid on both sides. Yeah, Israel deserve to defend themselves, but war is not the solution. And the biggest thing that, if you guys don't know, the Project 2025, it's even worse what it's going to come up with. So we got to be prepared in the right way to make sure the Middle East conflict and South Asia conflict and conflict in Russia, Ukraine, it's a very dangerous game ahead that we need to protect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reid.
Coy, thank you very much. It's a really very difficult question to answer in a minute, but I will tell you that this is where, as I highlighted earlier, that my 34 years of experience in the international and intelligence community really starts to come to bear. We have to be able, as a nation, to work with Israel and the Arab allies towards a ceasefire and a concurrent release of the hostages right now. Secondly, we then have to begin planning for what is going to be the long-term solution, which is we need to borrow from our experience that we had after World War II and with the Marshall Plan, and we've got to address a way to rebuild Gaza, to break the cycle of radicalization that is occurring, that is driving Palestinian youth to Hamas. And then we collectively have to be able to work together towards a long-term two-state solution where both Israeli and Palestinian families can live side by side in peace. And that's where we're going to really have to use American power with our Arab allies and with our Israeli allies to be able to make this possible.
Thank you. Ms. Kaul.
Thank you. I condemn the attacks that occurred in October. I stand in favor of a ceasefire with release of hostages. I think that, yes, I would support, for funding, but with conditions on it. I think that the breadth and scale of what has happened in the past several months has led to, a lot of innocent civilians being killed and over 1.5 million Gazans who are displaced today. So I think that, one, as someone who has worked at the Department of Defense and has worked with the Israelis, I have seen the sophisticated technology apparatus and the defense apparatus of Israel, the capacity it has with its intelligence network to really micro-target on the bad actors that are attacking Israelis. And I have seen on the ground. I'm the only candidate in this race that has lived in Israel and Palestine. I did doctoral field work. So I have personally been on the ground. I've crossed checkpoints. I've done interviews across the region there. So I really understand it at a very ground level. Thank you.
Mr. Devoe, you are up next.
Yes, my answer to that question pretty much aligned with Krystle Kaul. I support Israel. My only drawback, I support Israel in terms of providing the finance for them to fight against the Hamas. What I dislike is their efforts to go in and kill civilians. I am, out of all the candidates, I'm the only Vietnam combat veteran. I fought in some of the bloodiest battles in Vietnam, and I know what war does to people. So I do not like the idea that they're going in and bombing civilians. And that's my only opposition to the United States funding Israel at this point. But I stand by Israel and I will support them as a congressman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Subramanyam. I'm gonna be able to say your name one day, Mr. Subramanyam.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. I support funding humanitarian aid to Gaza, and I'd like to see, like others said, a long-term, a two-state solution. Hopefully to get there, we can. One of the issues is that one of the states can't be Hamas. That's the reality. So I'd like to see, some sort of negotiated ceasefire where hostages are released concurrently, and we can get humanitarian aid to Gaza. But we also have to make sure that long-term, a long-term peace requires that Hamas not be, one of the states. That's the reality. And so, it's a complicated situation, but I hope that we can have a long-term peace because there are a lot of people are suffering right now. Hopefully the U.S. can play a role in helping, with a long-term peace.
Thank you so much, Ms. Boysko.
you so much. When October 7th happens, I think everyone in the country was mourning and crying for the victims and for the hostages. However, by the end of the month, by the end of October, I was getting phone calls from my constituents who live in the 10th district, who have family members who lost 30, 40 members of their extended family. And at that point, I called for a ceasefire in October of last year. There is a law on the books right now. It's the Leahy Amendments, and it says specifically in U.S. law, U.S. human rights law, that ostensibly prohibit the United States Department and the Department of Defense from providing military assistance to foreign security units that violate human rights with impunity. I think that should answer, we are not following U.S. law when we are giving more money to Israel, when there is a famine, when they have no ability to have clean water, food, health care, and children, and moms are dying.
Mr. Qarni, you are up next.
Yeah, no, I'm actually very glad to see how the conversation has evolved over the last 6 months, and I'm the leading reason why I'm Muslim. I think about this every day. There's a marginalization and vilification and demonization in Western society of people who look like me. So I'm glad my colleagues have moved to it, and it's good. Representation matters, and one person can make a difference in advancing conversations. Look, we have to look at this from Vietnam to Iraq to now. Our foreign policy is really messed up. October 7th was horrific. Nobody is denying that. You have to look at the full 76 years and 100 plus years, how the Palestinian people have been displaced and their culture and history has been under attack. So my position is very clear. We need an unconditional, immediate, permanent ceasefire. It's different from a ceasefire. That means that we need an immediate ceasefire without any conditions of hostages on it, because Bibi Netanyahu is not acting in good faith. He does not care about the hostages. He is hell-bent on exterminating the Palestinian people through this genocide, and that is why I'm also opposed to a penny more to Israel of any form. I would have voted against this specific package, and that's a question that everybody needs to answer. I would have voted against this, and I will vote against any more future military.
Thank you, Mr. Qarni.
Thank you.
Ms. Anantatmula, you are up next.
I think Israel has the right to defend their sovereignty. I stand with Israel. And also, I think funding Ukraine war is the most ridiculous thing we are doing. We are worried about other countries' sovereignty, and while we leave our borders so open for our country to be invaded by illegal aliens and the drug cartels, and that is hurting our children with fentanyl in our schools, and these people who want their other countries' sovereignty to be funded ahead of their own borders, that is ridiculous. I think I'm going to fight against it, and I want to stop all foreign war funding for Ukraine, and I'm not giving a dime to Ukraine war.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Nembhard, you are next.
Just real quick, regarding the Ukrainian war, I would say, just think back to when we were a colony, and thank God France didn't look at it the same way when they were world powers with England. We would not have had the independence that we had when we were a burgeoning democracy. But regarding the point as it relates to Israel and Hamas, I'm right there with many of my colleagues about the nuanced approach that we need to take here, and the importance of putting conditions on aid at this point. I do not agree with leaving our allies stranded, right? But I do think it's important that we provide conditions. We ensure that that funding is mostly heavily towards defensive weapons. Humanitarian aid is a big focus as well. And then reminding folks that while we want to make sure we tackle Hamas, we cannot eradicate an ideology, and that is something that is unifying them. Just like the Cold War and communism, we have to deal with it through winning over the hearts and minds of their supporters. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and that completes that round of questions. I know that some of these topics are incredibly complex, and certainly 1 minute is not enough time to solve all the world's problems, but we are trying to be respectful of people's time, and we'll continue to do that. So the next question I'm going to ask is, do you support codifying the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, or Dreamers as they're often called, into law? And should other undocumented immigrants have a path to U.S. citizenship? And Ms. Boysko, you are first.
Thank you, Coy. I was the chief patron of the DREAM Act in Virginia, allowing our children who were brought here by their parents without their, they having any ability to make that decision into getting in-state tuition, and then followed that up with giving them the ability to get financial aid in Virginia. I believe that we need a thoughtful and reasonable way to give a path to citizenship. We have people who have been foundering and waiting for decades at this point. Our system is broken. I was very much in support of the 2013 Senate bill that unfortunately did not pass, but it's been decades. My children are older than the last time I think we actually did something meaningful on immigration. I believe that we need to respect the dignity and the human rights of all humans.
Thank you so much. Mr. Leighton, you are up next.
Thank you very much. So I have been speaking out about the fact that I believe Democrats need to do more about border security. It was recently ranked one of the #1 issues in the country. It was ranked the #1 issue in the exit polls in the Virginia presidential primary. So I think that the roots of a deal are there, where you're talking about, on one side, better border security, but not turning the border into a militarized occupied zone with children in cages. And then on the other side, increasing immigration, allowing immigration, especially with HB1 visas, things like that. But and finding a way to deal in a humane and fair way for the undocumented people who are here, and realizing that there's a lot of people of Hispanic descent, for example, who did wait their turn and don't want us to just give a blanket amnesty to everyone. So I believe if we work from both sides in, where better border security and finding a way to deal with the people such as the DACA people who were brought here as children, then I think that's the solution that is workable.
Thank you. Ms. Maldonado, you're up next.
Thank you. So I think I'm probably the only candidate who has actually been to the Arizona border and done work there, trying to keep the humanity in what is a real crisis situation. I also have been very clear that I think we need to establish an Article 1 immigration court and be able to establish more humane reception centers, expedite the disposition of the cases, and clear out the backlog. When we can do that, we can create better pathways for everyone coming to this country and make sure those are vetted quickly that should not be here. I do think there should be a pathway for citizenship to DACA. Children who came here not of their volition, and this is the only country they really know. It seems inhumane to do otherwise, but it's going to start with reforming immigration law and establishing an immigration court. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Subramanyam, you are next.
Thank you. I agree with the other Democrats. I would support codifying DACA. I helped reintroduce the DREAM Act when I was a clerk in the U.S. Senate with Senator Dick Durbin. And one of the things that was really striking was setting up the hearing to invite all the kids who had only known the United States as their country, and some of them not even realizing that they weren't where they were from originally in some cases. I think that generally I would like to see our country. My parents immigrated here in the late 70s. They got their citizenship within 2 years, or 4 years, their green card within 2 years. We haven't updated our immigration law in decades, and it's long overdue. So we have to not only codify DACA, but have comprehensive immigration reform. In Northern Virginia, we have a problem with people who are coming in on H-1B visas and live here for a long time and are trying to get those green card appointments, and trying to get citizenship here as well. So there's a whole host of immigration issues that we need to address.
Thank you. Mr. Reid, you are up next.
Coy, thanks. I think at the heart and soul of this question is a recognition and a restatement of the fact that we have to understand that we are a nation of immigrants. And so that has to be our underlying principle, and we need to understand that we need to be able to address a comprehensive immigration reform because, again, you have issues, and this is something that could so very much be a bipartisan issue that you could work across the aisle on because there are individuals who want border security. There are individuals who want H-2B visas so people can harvest crops, H-1B visas to support high-tech industries. And even the Secretary of Navy, Carlos del Toro, has talked about reforming immigration so that we can have individuals be able to build our Navy ships so that we can remain a naval power. So this is something that we can all come together on. We just have to be willing to kind of step back from that abyss of hyper-partisan politics and be able to sit down and discuss these things. And I think that this is possible.
Thank you so much. Mr. Qarni, you are next.
Yeah, I agree with Delegate Reid. It's very possible, and it's a lot of benefits to codifying DACA and creating a more seamless, streamlined path a way for undocumented residents to be citizens. A couple hours ago, I was actually on a call with one of my dear family members who's actually been here for 30 years, who's undocumented, right? And we're going through the process to get a green card for him. And this impacts a lot of people in this district. There's a lot of immigrant families, and many immigrant families have members of their family who are undocumented, including mine. This is actually the major reason why I got involved in politics 11 years ago, because I saw the ICE raids and the crackdown on immigrant communities and how it was impacting children right here in Prince William County. So yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. This is a human rights issue, humanity issue, but it's also an economic issue, because if we create these pathways and we bring people out of the shadows, we're also going to benefit economically, where folks will be able to contribute their tax dollars into the economy. So this is a win-win for everyone, and we just need to get on it right away. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Nembhard, you are next.
For that question, as to supporting codifying DACA, yes, I think it's important that we, number one, keep our promise to, we have suggested to those DACA recipients that we would create a pathway and allow them to live in the country that many of them only know. And so I have opened a practice previously years back for immigration work. I'm the son of 2 immigrants who came here legally, but at the end of the day, when I worked on those immigration matters, it was something that spoke to me, the complexity of the system. And so ultimately, it's important that we see, couldn't see the number, how much time, sorry, I was 30. But ultimately, for me, the focus is on making sure that we have a system that works. And right now, it's too elusive. You need expensive fees, attorneys, and that sort of thing. And many people are undocumented out of intention. They're not doing it intentionally. And so we need to lead with compassion on this issue.
Thank you. Mr. Pokharel, you are next.
Definitely with the DACA, I support that. As a immigrant, I came to this country as of 22 to go to college. And even serving in the United States Army, it took me 8 years to get my citizenship. I have to file a lawsuit. So it's not only DACA. There are a lot of people on a TPS, temporary protected status. They don't have any way to get their green card or citizenship. But one of the things that I would say, yeah, I came here legally. It will be great to have that, but not everybody have that opportunity to come here legally. But if they are here and they have no criminal records, we need to find a way for them to fulfill their American dream. Thank you.
Ms. Fillercorn, you are next.
Yes, thank you. I definitely support Pathway to Citizenship and codifying DACA as well. I was pleased to see the president's recent decision to expand healthcare coverage for DACA recipients. I know it's been mentioned several times about the need for a comprehensive immigration reform. Earlier this year, we thought we were close, as somebody mentioned. We had a bipartisan group of senators who had negotiated and agreed, actually come to a agreement on border and immigration legislation, and it took a while to get there. And unfortunately, it didn't I guess there were certain people that were trying to score some political points. And so unfortunately, it never came to be. So I support comprehensive immigration reform legislation. We need to strengthen our asylum system, expanding legal pathways for migration and protecting our refugee admissions program as well. And it's essential to, I believe strongly it's essential to us, addressing our shortcomings of our current immigration system and ensuring that the United States remains a beacon of freedom and opportunity for all. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Ms. Kaul.
Thank you. I fully support codifying DACA into law. Dreamers who were brought to this country as children deserve the security and stability of legal recognition. Additionally, I believe in creating a fair path of citizenship for other undocumented immigrants. Having comprehensive immigration reform will help provide a pathway that reflects our values of compassion and justice, and it will strengthen our economy and our communities. This is essential for a more inclusive and a prosperous future for all. We're a melting pot at the end of the day. I'm the daughter of Indian immigrants. Again, as I said, my grandfather came to this country to pursue the American dream, and I've spent the past 20 years fighting to protect it, and I believe that every person deserves a chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anantatmula.
I feel sympathetic towards DACA. I know these children did not come on their own because they had to come with their parents. The reality is they were illegal immigrants here. They all have to, even if we create a pathway for them to become legal, I think maybe they should stand in the line just right behind the legal immigrants who came here and who are still waiting to get their green cards, and their waiting time is 50, 70, and 150 years. So let them stand in the same line behind these legal immigrants and get their legal status. But since they have been illegally in this country, they should not be allowed to be voting, be given any voting rights, because I think Democrats have orchestrated this. Now they have all illegal immigrants coming, and now they'll say create a pathway. Why? Because they have become a voting bloc, because they want these illegal immigrants to quickly become citizens and start voting for them.
Thank you so much.
I think that should stop.
All right. Mr. Devoe, you are up next.
Thank you, Corey. I'm agreeing with my colleagues that we should codify DACA and pathway to citizenship. What I do not agree with is some of the issues with asylum seekers. All that come across the border, particularly from Mexico, are not necessarily bona fide asylum seekers. If they are running from drug cartel, that's a perfect example of someone for asylum seeker. But some of the other excuses that are being levied upon those at the borders are not necessarily asylum seeking. So that program needs to be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that concludes that round of questioning. I sound like an interrogator, don't I? And on to the next question, which will probably be the most controversial of the night. What, if anything, should Congress do to regulate data centers? Ms. Kaul, you were up first.
Thank you. Yeah, so I live in Loudoun. This is Data Center Alley. We have over 40 million square feet here that's covered in data centers. I think we need standards. We need standards of size and standards of energy usage. Data centers do help businesses, but at the same time, they are hurting the environment. And I think that right now it's unregulated, and I see a lot of complaints from folks across VA10. There's a lot of portions of VA10 that are rural. And as I was, the only congressional candidate who actually was invited to speak out during COP28. So I really understand sustainability, greening initiatives. And this is an issue that is very loud and focused. And we need to absolutely create some kind of standards so that they don't keep proliferating without any oversight over them. Thank you.
So just to clarify, and Ms. Kaul, you support federal standards on that?
I did not say federal standards. I think we just need some standards placed around them. And right now there's none. So they don't necessarily need to be federal. They could be at the state level.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pokharel, you are next.
All right. The data center that I've seen within the community as a CIA officer, as a targeter. If I am an adversary, that is the great target for me to drop something. And it's not only creating environment issues, also creating, taking a lot of energy, and being in the middle of the community is too dangerous. But what I would think, the community where the data center established, they need to understand this, and whatever they want to do, my job is to support them the way they wanted to make their town as a congressman. But the other side of it is, in the national security, is a bigger threat to be in the middle of the community. The data center is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Maldonado, you are up next.
Thanks for the question. This one is critically important. I think in a lot of places in CD10, this is an issue. It is an issue in Loudoun and Leesburg. It's an issue in Prince William County. It's an issue in the cities of Manassas. And it is going to be becoming even more so in Pokharel and Rappahannock as people try to balance developing and attracting commercial revenue and maintaining land conservation. So the way I think we need to look at this is placement in terms through the lens of placement, proliferation, and impact. Where are we placing them? I think they should not be in protected lands. They should not be in people's backyards. Proliferation, how many impact, what is the impact it has on not just the environment, but also on the quality of life of people there. Assessments need to be done on those things, and they should be done by an independent third party ahead of time before permission is given to be able to place those. We also have to keep up with the power grid. There isn't a match. We know we keep developing these things, but we know also we don't have the power infrastructure to support them, and we must. The last thing I will say is, I won't say it because my time is up.
I will ask, would those standards be federally mandated, or would you leave it to the state and counties?
So because it is land use development, I think it has to be at the state level. But what I will say is, I think that we do have to look at impact issues that we can make at the federal level around environment and water, soil, those kinds of things, and having those assessments be done by independent third parties and not the companies coming in to place the data centers.
Thank you so much. Mr. Reid.
Coy, thanks. This is one of those items where it's like we really need to understand the different levels of government that are in play with this, because what we have to recognize is that the localities are responsible for the land use ordinance that apply to how and where these are going to be cited. Then what happens at the state level is that we have made some tax incentives where perhaps we should repeal those tax incentives for probably areas across Northern Virginia. But we also have to recognize that there are rural areas around the Commonwealth that need this type of revenue to be able to build their schools. And then at the federal level, what we've got to be able to address, and this is where you get into discussions with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you get into discussions with the Department of Energy about how do we create a maintainable base load of energy generation and transmission, how do we protect our critical infrastructure, and how do we make sure that we're addressing the climate change goals that we have. So this is one of those issues that is going to require coordination across all three levels of government. And that's one of those reasons why it's like, I think that I am going to be able to be successful to be able to address these things, because I've been able to work across the aisle and work with all of these different levels of government, even now in the General Assembly.
Thank you so much. Mr. Leighton, you were next.
Thanks. I know it's a controversial issue. When I was collecting ballot signatures, somebody asked me, data centers for or against? I said against. He said, not signing your petition. So actually, one of the very first press releases I sent out was calling for Congress to regulate data centers. Congress has the power to regulate interstate commerce, which is what they use a lot of their power for. And data centers are the definition of interstate commerce. I think that it's actually somewhat of a national security issue, because if it's the infrastructure of our internet, and if there were some hostile actors with a weapon of mass destruction, they could really disable a huge amount of our infrastructure. So something like a certain number of data centers per square mile or something like that as a federal standard is something I've supported since I declared this my campaign.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anantatmula, you are up next.
This data center issue is, we don't have a simple solution as of now. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the power grids to support data centers. And they are sitting right in the middle of residential places, and people are complaining they are not willing to. All the power lines running right across. I mean, how are we going to address these issues? There can be health hazards. Have we thought of the health hazards that these power grids are going to bring? And have we thought about how we are going to regulate and the environment a portion of it? And do we have the infrastructure? How are we going to build the infrastructure? It's easy to bake the cake, but then if you have a cake that's large enough and you can't eat it alone, so how are we going to have this solution come to table with not hurting our residents? I think we need to start first hearing to our residents, just not the corporate people who wants to make money with these data centers. I think people's opinions do matter. Their safety do matter.
Thank you, Ms. Anantatmula. Your time is up.
Okay.
Mr. Devoe, you are next.
Yes, my opinion differs from some of my colleagues, and also I agree with some of my colleagues. As an engineer, I have built postal facilities the size of malls, and postal facilities are a great consumer of electricity, and the data centers are so the same thing. From a federal point of view, I think that we need to regulate that for the size of data centers and location, for land use, not to use for farmland. From a state level, we need to look at for the community, where they put in some data centers, we need that space for housing. So like from federal and state, there should be regulation for the placement and location of data centers. I would recommend a radius of 50 to 100 miles distance between each data center. Right now, they are building them like within a 5-mile radius of each other, which is very dangerous for a national point of view in terms of defense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Subramanyam. You were next.
Thank you. There's a couple things I did as a state senator when it came to this issue. First, I wanted to make sure that the data centers that we have are that we build are energy efficient and that they're using as much clean energy as possible. I'd like to see some federal standards for that. I'll say that one way we could do that, it may not be through legislation, but the fact that the GSA and other federal agencies are big consumers of data centers, that they can have standards as a customer of data centers and can require that of data centers. So that's one way to do it rather than legislation. Another thing that I was concerned about, that was mentioned earlier, was its effect on the power grid, both here in Virginia as well as across the country. And I think we should also look at the effect of data centers on the environment as well, and just see what we can do to address those issues. And then one thing that haven't done at the state level that I think should be addressed is also standards for data centers when it comes to them as a target for any sort of attack or anything. People don't realize that there's a lot of valuable information in these data centers, and that 70% of the internet goes to the data centers in Loudoun County, and we lend ourselves as a target to that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Qarni, you are up next.
Yeah, I'm opposed to any more data centers because I don't believe they're sustainable at the rate they're going and without any of a structured plan. So I would support federal legislation and either comprehensive, collective, or in pieces that looks at standards so data centers are not placed in certain regions next to schools, in natural parks, and so forth, historic sites. And also that they use, like, for example, the Energy Star regulations that are practices are there, so they're using renewable energy sources. But we have to realize that, this is a corporate greed problem. This is an environmental issue. This also is an economic issue as well. Also, I would support that ongoing study and auditing of data centers and its impact not only on the power grid, but also on the water supply and the agricultural land, because our district has a lot of agricultural land as well. and there hasn't been robust studies done, and we could be having a much more adverse impact due to the data centers. I realize they generate, you know, a lot of benefits, but I think right now the adverse impacts are severely understated, and we need to keep studying them.
Thank you, Mr. Qarni. Ms. Boysko, you are next.
Thank you. So the Senate district that I represented over the past 5 years is the most concentration, has the most concentration of data centers that are in the entire world. So I have been very much on top of this issue for a number of years, have talked with the energy, you know, the folks from the utility companies that have made it very clear that they are now at risk of not being able to have enough energy generation to provide for the residents in the community anymore. One of the things we did in the General Assembly this year was to create a study that is really going to go do a deep dive on the policy around this. I know that the DOE at the federal level has already set some recommendations. I think it is very possible that because of the massive amount of energy that we are consuming in these, that we need to look further. I also share the concerns around the security issues because, you know, our healthcare, our banks, all of everything is now in the cloud. It's a big problem.
Thank you, Ms. Boysko. And, oh, I'm sorry, I misplaced my little stack of paper. Ms. Fillercorn, you are next.
Thank you, Coy. Yes, I'm deeply concerned about the current development of data centers, something, as you've heard, we hear every single day, particularly in Western Loudoun, but certainly, you know, throughout the 10th and also in Prince William. I think, you know, as I speak to individuals, sometimes they talk more about the aesthetic nature of it. I think about the power usage and the water. They have a significant impact on electricity usage in Northern Virginia, and their continued development is only going to hasten that. I think we do need to consider federal standards as long as they're related to energy and climate. All of this is connected to, you know, to an existential threat when you think about, you know, climate change. And I was proud to have worked with, you know, and oversee passage during my time as Speaker of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, putting us on a pathway to carbon neutrality. And it helped. We also helped lead the Commonwealth to join RGGI. That's a whole separate conversation, but that's a regional agreement to reduce energy consumption. And that's my time. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And finally, Mr. Nembhard, you are last.
Thanks, Coy. To answer the question, I think from a federal standpoint, like many of my colleagues said, it's more of a local issue. But I ran for office last year, like I said, in the 22nd district in Western Prince William County. Prince William is slated, according to the Prince William Times, to overtake Loudoun and become the #1 location for data centers, which is to the demise, I guess, of my neighbors. I have a data center slated to go in my backyard. So I have a vested interest in this issue. And for me, I think that one of the things I plan to do is leverage soft skills, things like supporting and making conditions as it relates to working with lawmakers who listen to their residents. I think that's important. We see the gap with the county supervisors, in which you may have 5 county supervisors that really support it, but the places where they're going is where they don't live and they don't have to answer to those constituencies. So it's important for me to kind of leverage that role to try to get folks to listen to their constituents and then revisit that issue on a federal level if need be.
Thank you so much. And that concludes that round of questions. I'm going to do one more round. And I just want to say that I could keep asking you questions all night. Trust me, I have plenty. But I really appreciate y'all's time. And I know that this is made difficult with the number of candidates, but I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts in such a concise manner. And obviously, I encourage anyone who's not a candidate to follow up on questions that may not have been asked. The last question I'm going to ask, if I could actually get on my correct page here, is should the federal government forgive some or all student loans? And beyond that question, what, if anything, should Congress and the federal government do to make college more affordable? And Mr. Leighton, you are first up.
Thanks so much. So glad to get this question because this is a centerpiece of my campaign. I have been saying that we've basically been subsidizing our college tuition by giving unrestricted federal student loans to any school for any college for any student. And there's just no downward pressure on tuition. So my plan is to require colleges to keep tuition below inflation, or they get cut off from federal student loans. And I think that will make colleges start becoming more cost conscious. And because colleges realize that they could take the federal student loan money, the for-profit colleges ripped off a lot of students by selling them a substandard education and leaving them on the hook for these loans while they walked away with the taxpayer money. So I do support loan forgiveness for people who went to substandard colleges or were sold an education that did not live up to its promise.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pokharel, you are next.
Yeah, definitely. I support loan forgiveness. One of the things in my campaign is about providing free community college. America, we spend a lot of money all around the world, and we're not thinking about our own children. And the children, when they leave from the house to the new environment and to work there and take a full-time school, it's very hard to focus on the education. I had to do 2 jobs to complete my graduation, and it was not easy. So I totally support the forgiveness, and I also will be fighting to have a free community college for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Qarni, you are next.
Yeah, so I kind of live and breathe this all the time. I actually wrote components of the student loan forgiveness plan that the Biden administration and Congress passed recently. So the, we have, bailed out banks, and there have been economic advantages to that. So there are significant economic advantages to student loan forgiveness that will help really take the pressure off of a lot of the students who have been duped because of rising costs. Again, there's a lot of corporate greed involved in higher education as well. There's very little regulation. And I think this is Congress's where it can really intervene, because there's a lot of federal dollars that go for research, for Pell Grants and so forth, both to public and private four-year institutions. So we need better regulatory practices and taking a whole holistic approach. Free community college is one component of it. Tuition deflation is one component of it, but there's a lot of costs associated with higher education: room, board, fees, and so forth. Fees are not regulated. So beyond tuitions, higher ed is adding a lot of fees and so forth. So again, a lot of work needs to be done, but please check out my education plan on my website for more details.
Thank you, Mr. Qarni. Mr. Subramanyam, you are up next.
Yeah, no, I agree with what was said, and I'll just add that we should also strengthen our community college system and other means of like technical education, and certainly everyone should have the ability to be able to get a college education, 4-year college education, but at the same time we will also need to train people for the jobs of the future, and that doesn't always need a 4-year education, and sometimes it's just about building skills. But I do think student loans have been a really hard issue for a lot of my colleagues and friends, and I think having some sort of loan forgiveness is really important as we look at how people who are saddled with student loan debt can get the job that they want rather than stuck in the job that they're forced to be in because they need to pay off their student loans.
Thank you so much. Ms. Filler-Corn.
Yes, definitely forgiving student loans, absolutely. When I think about this question, I also think back to the G3 bill. So I had the opportunity to work closely with Governor Northam. I sponsored and passed that legislation that created this program. We called it the G3 program, which provided for tuition-free community college available to low-income and middle-income students. Extremely proud of that. And, I think when I also think about this issue, I also think about my ability to help keep tuition rates stable for our Virginia universities. I think that's also an important piece of that. And definitely forgiving student loans in support of that.
Thank you so much. Ms. Boysko.
Thank you for the question. It's timely because yesterday, President Biden announced an additional $7.7 billion in debt cancellation for 160,000 borrowers. And I am a very strong supporter of what he's doing to try to help the young people, Gen Z, Gen X. Well, I'm Gen X as a parent, right? Having to deal with a lot of that stuff for the kids now. But in the General Assembly this past year, we helped create pathways for, especially for people going into the medical field, where we're helping incentivize them. We do not have the population prepared to take the 21st century jobs. And with all of the seniors, going into retirement, we are really at a juncture that has to do something different. We cannot afford to have our young people not getting an education, not having a skill, not having a trade, and not be able to take the jobs of the future.
Thank you so much. Ms. Maldonado, you are up next.
Thanks very much. I come from a family of educators, the 2 generations above me, and I am married to a middle school teacher. And I am a Gen Xer that still is saddled with law school loans. And so these things matter deeply, not just to me, but to constituents across the nation. I will say that we do have to work on making sure that we do have loan forgiveness programs. And I think people have to have skin in the game. But when we work in certain areas as an incentive to be able to attract people to rural areas, to urban areas, to other areas, we need to do loan forgiveness. We need to do loan forgiveness for specialty sectors. And we also need to broaden the path. So we have non-traditional and traditional, and hopefully at some point we'll stop that distinction and just know that there are pathways, and whether they're apprenticeships or trades or they're colleges or what have you, that we allow for affordable pathways. We are one of few in the developed nations of the world that do not have less of a burden for people to educate themselves and to make a life. And that we can take some ideas from other countries as well to help improve what we have here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Anantatmula, you are up next.
I come from a family of educators. My husband himself is a professor, and I know how colleges have become so expensive and unaffordable. But loan forgiveness, I don't think I'm going that route at all. Instead, why can't we make the tuition more affordable for people to go to colleges? And why are we only focusing on college education? Instead, why are we not training our children from middle school and high school to have to educate themselves in trade skills? I mean, why are we creating that kind of a pressure that they have to go to college and they don't accomplish much in the college? So I'm not going that route at all. I don't think we have to make the tuition more affordable rather than give them debt forgiveness. What, are we going to start printing notes? That's all Biden has been doing, and I'm so against loan forgiveness. And rather, I would make it more affordable.
Thank you. Ms. Kaul.
Thank you. Yes, as an educator myself, I have been an educator for several years for smaller institutes, and now I teach at MIT remotely. I think the federal government needs to forgive more student loans, expand the program beyond just public servants and those who work for not-for-profits. And we need to provide immediate relief to millions of Americans, reduce the racial wealth gap, stimulate the economy. Education should be an investment in our future and not a lifelong financial burden. I myself paid off my loans only a few years back that I had from my undergrad and my master's. I think beyond student loans, there are a few things that Congress can do to make it more affordable, increase federal funding for public colleges to reduce tuition costs, expand Pell Grants to cover more expenses for low and middle income students, make community college tuition free, strengthen regulations for for-profit colleges to protect students, increase support for HBCUs and minority serving institutions, reform student loan repayment options to make them more manageable. I think these measures will ensure higher education accessible and affordable to all Americans. And I do think that a lot of reform is needed because we have students that are, just swamped with debt.
Thank you, Ms. Kaul. Mr. Devoe.
Yes, As far as student loan forgiveness, I agree with that 100%, as well as all of my other colleagues. I myself went to college on a basketball scholarship. Everyone does not have the athletic skill, so we need student loan forgiveness. As far as additional support for students, I am interested in workforce development and apprenticeship program. That is one avenue that we can curtail and prevent a lot of student loans and debt that many of our graduates get when they go to college. With that said, I had, as a chief operation officer for Northern Virginia Community College, I had a professor that I hired, a PhD, had $500 million in student loans. So like student loans place a burden on our academic professionals. So I'm totally for student loan forgiveness.
Thank you so much. Mr. Nembhard.
Thanks, Coy. As a collegiate athlete, and someone who had a scholarship in law school, I still have been burdened with debt from student loans, and so I'm a little biased in this, in that I'm probably one of the people that was included in the public service loan forgiveness recently. But after a decade of public service and payments towards it, but I 100% believe that we need to forgive student loans as it relates to those who have been dealing with it. In particular, my generation was has been in the ground zero of that in the financial crisis. Graduating into a financial crisis was not a fun ordeal for many of my peers. And so many of us are trying to recover from that, in addition to many of those other challenges. And so making sure we have free public universities, treating it like high schools, it's the new high school, virtual options, and then auditing universities for their spending as we move towards cost-effective measures.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Mr. Reid.
Well, thanks, Coy. This is a really good question to kind of end on, because I like to talk about the fact that the budget is about priorities and a vision of what we want America to be. And we have to make our investments in the budget based upon those things that are important for us to pay for right now, and those things that we are investing in to be able to provide a foundation for our future. One of the things that I think is that we need to address is we need to say, yes, we're going to continue to actually do the debt forgiveness for the items that we're working on right now, but we have to address the underlying causes of why college has grown much more rapidly in cost than healthcare. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that when I first got down to the General Assembly, I made this an issue, and 5 of the last 7 years, we've invested enough money in appropriations to where we have had 0 or 1% tuition increases, which is substantially less than the actual rate of inflation. So this is one of those cases where we have to have the political will and understand that we have to make an investment in education so we can address the root cause of the problem.
Thank you so much. And that concludes my questions for the evening. I'm sorry that we went a little bit over. I think we maybe started a little bit late. I appreciate your time and I respect your time. If you're listening to this as a voter, I would encourage you to go vote if you haven't already. But certainly, especially the primary process gives you the opportunity to go meet candidates at meet and greets and forums and things like that in a way that is really special. And I cannot emphasize enough that primaries are very, very, very important. And your vote matters in primaries as much, if not more, as it does in the general. So do not skip this phase in the process. You can vote early in person through Saturday, June 15th. Where exactly will depend on your jurisdiction. Here in Loudoun, it's in Leesburg. I know in Fauquier it's in Warrenton, and there'll be some satellite sites set up as well. So please check your local elections office for that information. And of course, precinct polling places will be open on Election Day, Tuesday, June 18th. Again, that is Tuesday, June 18th. That will be your regular polling place that you voted in last year. And I hope that you did vote last year. And I just appreciate all your time and being respectful. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you,
And
Coy.
thank you from the League of Women Voters to all the candidates and all the voters who attended today. And you can check out our website, vote411.org, for more information about voting, polls, etc. So thank you and vote.